Hi everyone, Real Recapped here. Today we're going to do a recap of the film The Core. It's an action film that's about the end of the world. It's filled with all kinds of apocalyptic scenes and some sci-fi action sequences. So without further delay, let's get started. The film starts in Boston on Green World Day. 3 people are about to make a great business deal, but suddenly, one of those people drops dead. Outside the building, multiple people have died at the same time and there's chaos. Down at Chicago University, Professor Josh is teaching his class about sound waves when 2 Secret Service men enter his classroom. They ask him to accompany them to Washington, where they escort him to some military facility. Josh meets his friend and colleague Serge at the facility. They're talking about their romantic lives as they enter a room with dozens of dead bodies. A General Purcell then briefs the two that the dead bodies are of people who all died in a 10-block radius at the same time. Josh guesses that all the people must have pacemakers, because he is an electromagnetic expert. The general tells him that he's right, and asks if a weapon could stop pacemakers like this. Josh doesn't believe a weapon can do that, and the general then sends them both home. Meanwhile, thousands of birds at Trafalgar Square start acting crazy and injure many people. Josh hears about this. He asks his doctorate students to collect data on such incidents. In space, a NASA space shuttle is about to land back on Earth. Commander Robert is handling the spacecraft. As he tries to enter the Earth's atmosphere, his computers malfunction. As a result, he's thrown off course and the craft is falling towards Los Angeles. Major Rebecca guides Robert to land the aircraft in a storm drain safely. On the other hand, Josh meets with Dr. Zimsky, who is a leading scientist in the field of geophysics. He shows Zimsky his test results, which clearly state that the end of the world is near. Zimsky doesn't want to believe it, but he eventually agrees with Josh and calls General Purcell. Back at the Pentagon, Major Rebecca is being investigated for the space shuttle crash. As she leaves the building, everyone is looking up to the sky. Rebecca looks as well and sees the northern lights in the Washington sky. Meanwhile, Josh and Serge are having a drink at a bar, discussing how northern lights are just some bigger signs of world destruction. Right then, the same Secret Service agents show up and bring them both to the Pentagon. There, Josh is taken to a meeting hosted by Purcell and Zimsky. They ask Josh to explain his research. Josh tells them that the Earth's inner core has stopped rotation for some unknown reason. As a result, the Earth's magnetic field is deteriorating fast. This will soon lead to the failure of all electronics on Earth, and then eventually to solar storms that will burn out the Earth's surface. Josh tells them that all life on Earth will end within a year. Purcell asks Josh to find a way to restart the core. Josh, however, tells the general that the first obstacle is to simply drill 2,000 miles to get to the core. Zimsky intervenes and explains how they can get to the core. All these men are taken to the salt plains of Utah, where Zimsky meets up with a colleague, Dr. Brazelton. Dr. Brazelton, or Braz, has a vehicle that can take people into the depths of the Earth. He shows them how his machine uses ultrasonic waves to cut through mountains. He also demonstrates a material that's not only unbreakable, but also enhances his machine's drilling power. He made this material himself, and it's known as unobtainium. He explains that in 10 or 12 years, he will have a complete vehicle made up of unobtainium to drill into the Earth's surface. Purcell asks Braz, what will it take to finish his vehicle in 3 months? Braz jokingly says, $15 billion. And Purcell agrees. Next, we're introduced to a hacker known as Finch. He goes by the name Rat, and he is the most wanted hacker in the world. Purcell hires Rat to control the flow of information on the internet. They don't want the world to know about the dangerous situation, as it will cause panic and chaos. At the Pentagon, Rebecca and Robert are cleared by the authorities and are assigned to Purcell. All these people are gathered in a secret facility that is the headquarters for their mission. Josh explains to all the staff at the facility about how the world is ending. He also explains their plan to save the planet. They will use a ship built by Braz to reach the core. Rebecca and Robert will pilot that ship. At the core, they will set off 5 nukes to restart the rotation of the core. All the members start their training on a simulator of this ship, but they realize it's really hard to accurately control the ship. Meanwhile, Josh is working on an instrument that he built. This instrument will allow the pilots to navigate the ship inside the Earth. When all of this is happening, the Earth is beginning to witness huge thunderstorms. Just before the ship's launch, a super thunderstorm burns Rome to the ground, destroying every building, including the Colosseum. The planet is decaying faster than Josh's estimation. The day of the launch comes, and the ship is going to enter the Earth's crust from Mariana's Trench. As the ship is launched, however, an underwater earthquake makes things difficult for the crew. To make things worse, they get caught up in a whirlpool that is leading them to a crash. But they manage to use the ultrasonic guns in time to drill through the crust. Everyone is cheering and they begin traveling inside the crust. As they are nearing the mantle of the Earth, they're worried about what they will find. However, the ship manages to take all the impacts of this journey with ease. All this while Zimsky is recording every event on a tape recorder. After 12 hours of traveling, they're 700 miles inside the Earth. That's when they observe a strange obstacle in their path. Josh tells them that it's an empty cavity within the mantle. They don't have time, so they go inside the cavity, but it's lined up with giant crystals. One of the crystals gets stuck in the ship's lasers, and the ship stops. The crew decides to wear their pressure suits and go out to check. They light up the outside and witness a giant cavity filled with crystals. They use a laser to cut the crystals that cause them to stop. Right then, the roof of the cavity starts leaking and magma starts to fill up the cavity. The laser also runs out of oxygen, so Josh uses his suit's oxygen to run the laser. Braz cuts the crystal, but Josh passes out. The crew takes him inside and Robert is inspecting the damage. That's when a broken crystal falls on his head and kills him. He falls down into the magma. Rebecca starts the ship again, and they start moving once again. Josh wakes up to find out that the ship is moving, but Robert is dead. By the second day, the ship is near the core boundary. Braz, Josh, and Sergei start preparing the nukes. Rebecca and Zimsky see giant diamonds in their path. They try to avoid a collision, but one of the diamonds hits the weapons pod. They have to leave the pod, but Serge goes back to retrieve the control panels for the nukes. He passes the panels to Josh, but couldn't get out. Josh asks Rebecca to stop the ejection of the weapons pod, but she refuses. Josh watches as Serge gets crushed to death. Josh is devastated, and he goes up to Rebecca and starts fighting with her. He blames Rebecca for Serge's death. After 35 hours, the ship is 1,900 miles into the Earth. It reaches the core, and upon entry, they feel that something is wrong. The core is less dense than their expectations, and even 1,000 megatons of nukes can't restart it. Zimsky calls Mission Control to abort this mission. He also wants to start a mission called Destiny. When Josh asks about Destiny, he finds out that Zimsky and Purcell made a weapon, Destiny, that caused the core to stop. Zimsky believes Destiny can restart the core, but Josh thinks it will cause more damage. Purcell, however, agrees with Zimsky. Josh asks Purcell to give him some time to figure out how he can start the core again. Everyone agrees to keep the mission going, but Zimsky is against it. He starts to get riled up, but Braz knocks him out. Out on the surface, San Francisco is hit by a giant solar storm that destroys the city and burns thousands of people to death. Purcell decides to start Project Destiny, but Josh asks Rat to delay Destiny. As Zimsky wakes up, he sees Josh and Braz trying different scenarios to start the core. He proposes to set off each bomb at a different location to cause a ripple effect that can do the job. The only way to place nukes in different locations is to place them inside different pods of the ship, and then eject those pods. However, the only way to eject the pods is to use a manual switch that's in a crawl space. The crawl space is 9,000 degrees hot, and Braz convinced the others to let him do the job. As soon as he enters the crawl space, he starts burning up, but manages to turn on the switch. Braz ends up dying. Meanwhile, Rat manages to keep stalling the Project Destiny. Josh and Zimsky start ejecting pods with nukes at specific locations. At the last pod, Zimsky gets stuck under a nuke, and the pod is about to be ejected. He tells Josh that he will need the fuel rods from the ship's reactor to increase the impact of the last nuke. Zimsky gets ejected with the nuke. Josh takes the fuel rods, which cause the ship to lose all power. He then ejects the last pod and goes to Rebecca. They know they will die if the ship doesn't move. Just then, Josh remembers that unobtainium turns heat into energy, so he uses the walls of the cockpit to power the ship. All the nukes start going off, and eventually, the core starts moving again. Josh and Rebecca spend the next 20 hours trying to navigate the ship through less dense areas. They finally reach the ocean near Hawaii, but there the ship loses power again. They send signals that attract the whales towards the ship. The army uses this to find the ship in the ocean and saves them both. A week later, Rat leaks all the documents about the mission, and the world realizes how Robert, Braz, Serge, and Zimsky died saving everyone. The film ends at this point. So folks, this wraps up our recap of The Core. Feel free to drop in a comment. Tell us if you like this film and what film you'd like us to recap next. We'll see you in the next video.